Let me tell you a story about a truck that never left work. Actually, 36 of them. It's a story that sparked a huge multi-million rupee legal battle that went all the way to the Supreme Court. And it all boiled down to one single powerful question.
I mean, think about it. It seems pretty straightforward, right? If a truck works its whole life on private property and never even touches a public road, does it make sense to tax it for using those roads? Well, that is the exact dilemma at the heart of this entire case.
All right, so let's set the stage. Our story has three main characters. You've got a logistics company, a massive self-contained industrial plant, and, of course, a state government that wants to collect its taxes. So, our story kicks off when a company, Tarachand Logistic Solutions, lands this big contract. Their job? To handle iron and steel materials. But here's the key detail, the thing that changes everything. They're doing it entirely inside the Visakhapatnam steel plant, which is this huge, walled-off industrial world of its own. Now, to get this job done, the company brought in the big guns. We're talking about 36 heavy-duty vehicles, all brought in specifically for this one contract inside this one single location. And this is the point you gotta remember. These 36 trucks were brought into the plant, and they just stayed there. The whole place is surrounded by walls, it's got security guards, and you and I can't just wander in. Public access is a big no-no. These trucks were basically operated in their own private bubble. For a little while, everything was going just fine. But then, an unexpected letter shows up from the transport department. And that letter, it sparked the central conflict of our whole story. The state of Andhra Pradesh sent them a bill for over 22 lakh rupees in motor vehicle tax. Can you imagine? The company was totally stunned. They were thinking, this tax shouldn't even apply to us. But facing the threat of having their vehicles seized, they paid the whole amount under protest and got ready for a fight. So the whole legal showdown really came down to two totally opposite points of view. The company's argument was pretty simple. Road tax is what's called a compensatory tax. It's a fee you pay for using public roads. So, since their trucks never use those roads, they argued, why should they have to pay? The state, though, they fired back with two arguments. First, they said the trucks were kept for use in the state, so pay up. And second, and this was a big one, they said because the steel plant was government-owned, its grounds were a public place. This whole disagreement pretty much forced the courts to zoom in and look really, really closely at the legal definition of one specific term that would decide the whole case: public place. And you know what? The legal definition of a public place all comes down to one critical phrase: right of access. The law doesn't really care who owns the land. The only thing that matters is whether the general public has a legal right to be there. If they can't just walk in, it's not a public place. Simple as that. So, with the battle lines clearly drawn, the case started its long journey through the court system. And let me tell you, the early results were all over the place. It was a total legal roller coaster. At first, things looked good for the company. A high court judge completely agreed with them, said the steel plant was not a public place, and ordered a full refund. But then the state appealed. A bigger panel of judges looked at it and flipped the decision. And their reason? It was a technicality. They basically said the company didn't file the right piece of non-use paperwork. Talk about legal whiplash. After that, there was only one place left to go: the Supreme Court. And just like that, the stage was set for the final word from the highest court in the land. The Supreme Court now had to step in, cut through all this confusion, and deliver a clear final ruling. So what did the Supreme Court do? Well, instead of getting tangled up in all the legal weeds, they just applied some clear, simple, four-step logic to solve the entire puzzle. The court's logic was just so incredibly straightforward. Step 1, the tax law is for vehicles in a public place. Got it. Step 2, a public place means the public has a right of access. Okay. Step 3, does the public have a right to just walk into a walled, guarded steel plant? Of course not. Absolutely not. Which leads to the final, logical conclusion: if the trucks aren't in a public place, then the tax simply does not apply. Boom, done. But wait, you're probably wondering, what about that whole paperwork argument that the High Court used? Well, the Supreme Court tackled that head-on. They explained the legal pecking order. You have the Act, that's the main law passed by the legislature. It's the ultimate boss. It creates the tax and says it only applies in a public place. Then you have the rule about filing for non-use. That's a secondary, subordinate thing. Its job is to help implement the act, not to make it bigger or more powerful.
A simple rule can't just create a tax that the main law, its parent, says doesn't exist. The act always wins.
The court really hammered this point home by quoting this classic legal principle from a judge named Justice Rolat. What this basically means is that tax laws have to be crystal clear. The government can't tax you based on what they think a law was trying to say or what seems fair. The law has to spell it out, black and white, that you have to pay. If there's any gray area, any doubt, the benefit of that doubt goes to the taxpayer, not the tax collector.
So yeah, the company got its money back, which is great for them. But this ruling is so much bigger than just one tax bill. It actually reinforces some really fundamental principles about how our laws and taxes are supposed to work.
So what are the big lessons here? What should we take away from all this?
Well, there are a few really important principles that came out of this verdict.
First, taxes need clear authority. Governments can't just make them up. They need a clear law passed by a legislature. Second, the purpose of the tax matters. This case confirms that vehicle tax is basically a fee for using public roads. If you don't use them, you shouldn't have to pay. Third, the real meaning of public. It's not about ownership, it's about access. And finally, and maybe this is the most important one for all of us, rules have limits. Bureaucratic rules are supposed to support laws, not stretch them or create new taxes out of thin air. And that kind of leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about, doesn't it? This whole huge case came down to one little rule that didn't quite line up with the law it was supposed to be based on. It really makes you wonder what other rules or regulations or procedures that we all follow every single day might actually go a little bit beyond what the law truly allows. Something to think about.